Watch this.
Idaho's Republican Party is looking to turn up the heat in their winter meeting for those who aren't GOP enough. A proposed rule change could give a small group of people the power to pick who gets to be on their primary ballot. Downtown Boise is about to lose a valuable resource for assault survivors over a disagreement with the county. Sort of. What's the future of Faces of Hope and its foundation?
This is just one of my passions, my hobby out of control.
Some people collect stamps, others coins. But what about airplanes? That's one Nampa man's mission. But a pair of wings he just purchased can't make the trip from Colorado. At least, not without a little help. This weekend, the Idaho Republican Party could give a small group of people the power to decide who is worthy of being on the GOP primary ballot. Last summer, just 216 Republican State Central Committee members got together on a remote ranch in Challis, remember that, to vote on changes to the Idaho GOP rules. One of them ended up being the cornerstone of our Idaho GOP divide story a couple months ago. And it was this rule here, the Idaho Republican Party Platform Enforcement Rule, where they gave the state GOP Central Committee, legislative district committees, and county central committees the power to call any Republican elected official on the carpet for not following the party platform closely enough, for not being Republican enough. During that very meeting, they issued a vote of no confidence for Governor Brad Little and 14 other Republican lawmakers for voting against last session's library bill. And several other lawmakers have also faced the same scrutiny from their respective legislative district and central committees. The penalty? The possible loss of party support during an election. Well, they found those guilty more than once. If they found those guilty more than once, they could lose access to funds or being included on campaign flyers. That could be the punishment. But apparently, that punishment wasn't enough, because one of the proposed rules to be considered at this weekend's GOP winter meeting would be to not just take away the party support for a second censure, but they would take away the ability for that elected Republican official to be included on a party primary ballot for the next 5 years. And that would apply to any state or county constitutional officer. And like we mentioned back in November, Representatives Mark Sauter, Lori McCann, Julie Yamamoto, Matt Bundy, Kevin Roten, and Stephanie Mickelson were all censured by their respective central committees since last legislative session. And should any of them face the same tribunal coming up this upcoming legislative session, and this rule passes this weekend, well, they could be subject to removal from the 2024 Republican primary ballot. So we decided to ask two of them what they thought of this proposed rule enhancement.
Oh, wow. Wowee.
Republican Representative Julie Yamamoto.
This is incredible.
So you haven't seen this?
No.
And Republican Representative Matt Bundy.
And I'm assuming that you're having me specifically look at prohibit the elected official from being placed on any Idaho Republican primary ballot. Is that correct?
Correct. Are both just learning about a possible rule change within their political party. Any elected official found to have violated any portion of the party platform and censured for a second time could not only lose campaign support from those GOP central committees, but also be kept from appearing on a primary ballot for 5 years. So what do you think of that?
I am amazingly disappointed. I just think whatever happened to the Democratic Republic, where we get to decide who the people vote and decide who represents them. If we were hearing those words outside of the United States, outside of Idaho, Idahoans would be up in arms and saying, who do you think you are? You are not the boss of us. You don't get to decide for me. That's why I go to the ballot box.
Bundy,
I think if we look at that, that's
believes the same thing.
That's a step too far. We take our views to the voters, and that's who determines if we're on the ballot or not. I've gone through 2 election cycles. I've been elected, and I've been reelected, and I'm up for election again. So I have 50,000 people I represent. And so when I make a decision and I look through the issues, I think I'm responsible for the 50,000 people. I'm responsible to the party. I'm responsible to myself, and I'm responsible to my conscience and those around me.
In that order?
Pretty much. I think the responsibility to the voters is number one. And once I get past the voters, I think everything's kind of lumped into the same thing.
As somebody who has been censured once, this puts you kind of one strike away from being susceptible to this.
Right. If all we need is somebody to rate all the bills and say this is what it is, they don't need 105 of us. People want to know that whoever they have there has a mind of their own, and that it isn't because of friendships, it isn't because of special interests, it's not because of somebody took you to lunch, it's because you are looking into the issues, you're trying to look at not just what it says, but what are the far-reaching ramifications of that, what are the intended and unintended consequences, and you make a choice.
Representative Bundy, a 20-year Air Force veteran, when it comes to disagreements in politics, likes to pull from his knowledge of military history.
And my favorite Patton quote is, if everyone in the room's thinking the same thing, then somebody's not thinking. And so I want to be allowed, and I think we have been in the Republican Party, we're allowed to think, which means we're going to have a difference of opinion on a few things. Obviously, having read that, where a smaller group wants to be able to determine who can and can't be a member of a political party, doesn't seem to be where we've come over the past 250 years of American history.
Well, the timeline included in this proposed rule could also be a cause for concern. A county central committee or a legislative district committee can petition to call a lawmaker on the carpet. And within 10 days, that lawmaker will be notified by the committee chair. Set a date for a hearing, but no sooner than 40 days. However, it can't be longer than 100 days after getting that petition. If 60% of the committee decides to censure that lawmaker, and it's their second offense, well, then they have 30 days to appeal, with an appeal hearing to take place at the next regular meeting of the state executive committee. The next meeting that takes place at least 14 days after the appeal is filed. So let's say a group of precinct committeemen decide they don't like how a Republican lawmaker voted in the last week of a legislative session, which typically hits around the end of March. Let's say they wait a week to file that petition, and let's say they set a date for a hearing at the early possibility, which would be 40 days later, which puts it in the middle of May. And let's say they are censured, and that lawmaker is not allowed to be put on the next primary ballot. Well, the earliest they could have an appeal hearing is 2 weeks after that. By this time, well, we're looking at the end of May. And guess when the primary election takes place in Idaho? Usually around the third week of May. So how's that going to work? And what constitutes a second censure? Is it by more than one central committee, or is it because of more than one vote during the session? These are the questions we would have liked to have answered by either the state party, the Rules Committee chair, or the person who submitted the rule change. But we have yet to hear back from Idaho GOP Chairwoman Dorothy Moon, Brett Regan, or Harry Heath. The winter meeting Rules Committee, that meets tomorrow at 6 p.m. at the Harvest Church in Meridian. For 17 years, the Faces of Hope Victim Center has provided valuable resources to victims of trauma, what they call wraparound services for survivors of domestic violence, rape, and sexual assault, all in one downtown Boise location. We learned in late December the Faces of Hope Foundation will be leaving the Faces of Hope Victim Center. So why? Well, it's been brewing for some time, but the crux of it is Ada County, which owns the building, and the foundation, well, they haven't agreed on everything when it comes to the use of the name Faces. So the Ada County commissioners sent the foundation a letter telling them they need to be out by the end of this month. Does that mean those services will no longer be available in downtown Boise? Not exactly, which is how the vice president of the Faces Foundation board explained it to Joe Paris.
By the end of January, the Faces of Hope Foundation will be gone from the Faces Victim Center in Boise.
Yeah, we're in a state of flux really right now.
Sid Sullivan is the vice president of the Faces of Hope Foundation. They received this letter in December from Ada County telling them they were being evicted.
It came to us as a surprise. We were saddened by that. We felt like there was still room for us to come to an agreement and work some of our differences out, but they chose not to pursue that, and so as a result, we've had to start pursuing an alternative.
That alternative will begin with the project that was already in the works, a Faces Foundation Center in West Ada County.
We're excited to announce that in January here this month, around the 20th of this month, we'll be receiving occupancy there and being able to open that location. So that gives us some breathing room, and we're excited about that.
And that is just one part. The foundation wants to keep a footprint in Boise.
We're in the process of pursuing another location here in the downtown area so that we can continue to serve our clients that continue to come from this area of the valley. as well as the Boise State University area and campus.
With the foundation moving to a new location, are their services just simply going to disappear from the Victim Center?
No, every single service that we offer today will continue to be offered at the location in West Ada, as well as in our new location when it opens up, sooner than later, by the way. And that includes legal help, advocacy, counseling, and Hope's Closet, and gas cards, meals, hotel nights, anything like that. We continue and promise our community that we're going to offer that.
The foundation will host those monetary resources as well as things like advocates and legal experts. The Victim Center in Boise will continue to have local law enforcement, prosecutors' offices, medical and legal services.
Part of what we need to do is market that, and we're going to extend a great effort as a board and also the employees of our foundation, ensuring that victims recognize where we're at, know where to go in their moment of time and in their moment of crisis.
The reality is, for a time, the foundation services in West Ada and the Boise Faces Victim Center, they will be separated by a drive.
Sooner than later, I would hope that we have something that we can announce within the next 30 days, maybe even sooner. Move in probably within maybe the first quarter of this year.
The adjustment will be adding that second foundation center in Boise. Sullivan says the plan is to have that soon.
In terms of physically starting to take things out of there, is it going to feel awkward, do you think?
Oh man, yeah, it will. Anytime anybody moves anywhere into a new home, a new facility, a new office, all of that's challenging and difficult. But we're committed to work with the county to make this an easy transition. We don't want this to be disruptive for anybody.
And Sid and I were speaking this afternoon. He tells me that as soon as they have that new Boise spot locked down, they'll let us know. Brian, their real bottom line is the services that are available, they are still there. So do not think that anyone's quitting on the victims or the survivors of these situations.
So it's just leaving that location, but not leaving downtown Boise.
Right. And we'll keep everybody updated as that new location gets moved into.
Gotcha. Thanks, Joe.
I got you. Well, the plan to reduce the wolf population in Idaho could be just as devastating to grizzlies and big cats. That's according to a lawsuit meant to stop it and an argument a federal judge heard today. Morgan Romero has that and a few more news nuggets in today's 411.
Jeremy Best, the eastern Idaho man accused of murdering his wife, her unborn baby, and his infant son, pleaded not guilty to his 3 counts of first-degree murder. According to a live stream of the arraignment from East Idaho News, Jeremy Best appeared in court by video conference yesterday. Best was arrested in December after an Amber Alert was issued for his 10-month-old son. He faces up to life in prison or the death penalty for each murder charge. A status conference is set for March 14th in Teton County. 13 conservation groups are suing the state of Idaho over wolf trapping, all to protect grizzly bears and lynx. Today, a federal judge in Boise heard arguments on whether to halt wolf trapping. The lawsuit was originally filed in 2021 after a new law expanded wolf trapping in Idaho. The lawsuit argues trapping and snaring wolves will injure and kill grizzly bears and lynx because their habitats overlap. Grizzlies and lynx are federally protected under the Endangered Species Act. So, conservation groups argue wolf trapping is unlawful because it violates the ESA. Speaking of wildlife, Visit Idaho unveiled its 2024 Idaho Travel Guide. It highlights Idaho's vast outdoor activities as well as fun food and helpful history. The best part? It's free. Head to visitidaho.org to get your copy today. And that's the 411 on the 208. I'm Morgan Romero.
Now, to see one-of-a-kind collectibles and artifacts, you'll likely have to make a trip to a world-class museum. Think the Smithsonian in D.C., the Met in New York. What about the Idaho History Museum in downtown Boise? That's pretty good. How about the Spirit of Flight in Nampa, though? Not in North Carolina, the first in flight, not in Ohio, the birthplace of aviation, but Nampa, Idaho. Not exactly the first place you think of when it comes to air travel, but one group is hoping to change that. Over the last few years, the Spirit of Flight Museum has been in the process of relocating its collection from Colorado to the Treasure Valley. And they have their sights set on a new pair of wings, well, that could use a little lift to make it happen.
In a neighborhood of Nampa hangars,
This is just a hobby out of control.
there hides a lifetime's worth of rare collectibles,
We have 6 items in this collection that the Smithsonian doesn't have.
spanning wall to wing.
I'm looking for stuff that you're not going to see in any other collection
Gordon Page pilots the nonprofit,
about saving history and about aviation history in general.
given a proper call sign,
We're getting there.
the Spirit of Flight, fueling a passion with each
So
and every story.
this thing was so famous it actually had a hobby shop model. So in 2017 we heard about it almost burned up in these fires in Temecula, California. And I went out and helped load it up, get it on a truck and get it out of there before it burned up.
And after a few decades,
Since 1998.
there's always one more project on the horizon.
And we found a 1937 Waco biplane, so it's old school.
And lucky for us, class is in session.
Part of the Grand Canyon Airways, it's the longest continuing airline today. And we got really fortunate to find one of the few airplanes that survived. And then it got taken into World War II, part of Lockheed for a while, which is weird. They didn't fly Lockheed airplanes. They flew this airplane around with their execs, probably smart. So the bad guys didn't know if there was somebody that is in a Lockheed airplane that's important, they're flying a Waco. But I do know that the president at the time of TWA Airlines flew on this airplane that we're getting. And years later, a friend of mine had it and was done with it, and it's something that I wanted. I bugged him for many years to get this plane.
Well, he's got it, kinda.
So there's a cost to it.
It charges a premium in time and labor.
We know what we're doing. We've done this a whole bunch of times.
Time and time again, trucking planes all across the West.
I've done 50 of these moves back and forth, and for me, it's just a Tetris game.
But still, Page is under a pay-to-play platform.
It's always about money.
The shipping costs for his latest edition will run thousands of dollars.
As soon as we get it here, I think we could have it in the air in a year to 18 months.
Time, money, and labor.
I love everything about this.
But whoever said time flies when you're having fun never made their way into this hangar,
Right here in Idaho.
where flying is the fun that turns back the clock.
And it sparks that or ignites your spirit of flight inside so that you're going to learn and want to learn more. That is our mission.
Page has turned to GoFundMe, which isn't a space that he's used a ton, I understand. The museum survives, off volunteers. He says no one draws a paycheck, and financially, they ask for a $10 donation at the door when somebody goes through the museum. Over the years, that adds up. If you have 67,000 visitors,
Sure.
which is the number he gave, but like an airplane, 67,000, you add a zero to that. I can do math. So
Can you?
I can try. So, I mean, that's more than $500,000,
Yeah.
but if you have like a handful of airplanes, I think they're more expensive than that.
They
So-
usually are. And you were saying during the stories we were watching that, he got into planes because of a model he got as a kid about a plane. Getting that thing up here, it's going to be like going back to building that model once again.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like that.
Nice.
You're a
round
smart guy, Brian.
Thanks, Andrew.
Our active weather pattern continues with another round of moisture tonight. Mainly, we'll be moving in later tonight and overnight with that moisture. Mainly, valleys will be seeing rain and very light snow accumulations in the mountains. After the moisture, we see some winds pick up, mainly towards Magic Valley areas, and Mountain Home can see those gusts up to 45 miles an hour. And then after that, we have more weekend snow on tap with those light accumulations expected for the valleys and a few extra inches for the mountains. So here's how that moisture is expected to move through tonight. You can see, again, mainly in that evening overnight hour time frame, probably done before you wake up. Even in the morning, could see a little bit more snow towards Magic Valley areas. But again, we're in a very active pattern right now, so we are expecting more of that moisture and colder air to start to work its way through. So you can see, even looking at the weekend and past that time frame, more snow is on tap for us.
Well, on this day in history, Moses Alexander took office as Idaho's governor. But there's more weight to it than that, because the German immigrant was the first Jewish governor elected in the entire United States. Moses was born in Germany, November 13th, 1853, came to New York when he was 14, then moved west to Missouri. In 1915, Kansas City Star article said he was the mayor of a town there in Missouri, Chickalathy, I think is what it's called, 1888. Then in 1891, he came to Boise, opened a men's clothing store. You may have heard of it. Alexander Davis Men's Clothing Store, which after more than 130 years in business, just closed last March of last year, that is. In 1897, he was elected mayor of Boise twice. During his 2 terms, Alexander established the first fire department, the first cement sidewalks were put in, and he had the first street paved. He lived up to his slogan, "Let's build up Boise." Years later, in 1914, Alexander was elected as the 11th governor of Idaho, as one of the few Democrats to be elected and the first Jewish one at that. Jewish Daily even extended their warmest congratulations, sending it by telegram. And Alexander's 2 terms as governor, he started the state highway system, he gave workers compensation, and he also included the state insurance commission. Moses Alexander, by the way, he also died 92 years ago today at the age of 78, and he's buried in the Morris Hill Cemetery. All right, several comments today that's ended on several of them about the new GOP proposed party rules this weekend. I recall GOP candidates running based on freedom. Is this illegal? Shameful and frightening for sure, says Terry. I don't understand how in a state that people claim they want the least amount of government involvement in their lives is allowing the power to be consolidated down to a few that can then do what they want. Oh, and Moon is not a native Idahoan. That is correct, but native doesn't really matter so much. Just they want people to come in with some good ideas. It seems that the new authoritarian rules by the Moon sect of the Idaho GOP only help to explain why voters don't need to elect legislators loyal to a political party, but we need to elect representatives loyal to their own district, regardless of their party affiliation, says Steve. Finally, we vote for the people to use their brains and best judgment to learn the issues and to make the hard decisions, not to blindly follow the dictates from the Central Committee, says Tony. Again, open invitation to Chair Moon if she wants to talk to us about this. Love to hear it. We'll see you tomorrow.